Hello everyone, I am Amit Kumar, Assistant Professor in the Department of Social Work, Bhopal School of Social Sciences, and I welcome you all in this lecture series. The topic of my lecture is Stages of Lifespan. Let me introduce about the lifespan. What do you mean by lifespan? Lifespan basically refers to the period of time from conception to death. And the lifespan development knowledge is an important domain because it helps in unfolding the mysteries of human development. It includes issues such as the stages in which development took place through accumulation of knowledge at various stages of development and the extent to which children are born with innate structure versus learning through experiences. Now, let me give you the definition of lifespan given by Balz in 1987. Lifespan development psychology is the field of psychology which involves the examination of both constancy and change in human behavior across the entire lifespan, that is, from conception to death. Now, let me make you understand about this lifespan development. What do you mean by lifespan development? As life is not a unilateral approach, so lifespan development is also not having unilateral approach. Rather, it's a multilateral approach which involves the following: biological forces, which includes all genetic and health related factors that influence the development of a child. They provide raw material in form of genetics and set boundary conditions for development and parental development like brain maturation, puberty, menopause, facial expression and changes in cardiovascular functioning. Diet and exercises are some example of biological forces. Now come to the next approach, that is psychological forces, which includes all internal perceptual, cognitive, emotional and personality factors that affects the development of a child. Intelligence, self-confidence, honesty and some self-esteem are some examples of psychological factors. Now comes the third aspect, that is socio-cultural forces, which includes interpersonal, societal, cultural and ethical factors that affects the development of a child. It is at this point, it is important to understand how people and environment interact with each other, and the family, peers, co-workers and social institution and culture influences the development. Poverty is the classic example of socio-cultural forces. Now comes the last aspect, that is life cycle forces, which reflects the differences in how the same event affect people of different ages. Each individual is a product of unique combination of these forces. No two individual, even in the same age group and family, experiences these forces in the same way. Now comes issues in lifespan development. The first issues in lifespan development is continuity and discontinuity. What do you mean by continuity and what do you mean by discontinuity? The question of whether development is a solely and evenly continuous or whether it is marked by age-specific period. Developmental psychologists who advocates the continuous model describe development as a relatively smooth process without sharp or distinct stages through which an individual must pass. That is, development is conceived as a process of the gradual accumulation of behavior, skills or knowledge. In contrast, those who hold the second view would suggest that developmental changes is best characterized as discontinuous in nature. Now comes stability and change. Another issue which is of important to development psychology is the issue of stability versus change, and it is best characterized by stability or change. For example, does a behavior or trait such as shyness stay stable in its expression over time or changes? To cite an example, could a person's degree of shyness fluctuate across the lifespan. Now comes the next aspect, that is nature versus nurture. Whether the behavior ultimately developed by child is due to heredity or due to environment. And there are ample number of studies which proves that the 50% of the genetic of the personality of an individual is shaped by heredity, and almost 50% of the personality of an individual is shaped by the environment. Now comes the core of our topic, that is stages of development. And in this stage, first one is prenatal stages. Prenatal stages is the stage in which new life begins with a combination of male sex and female sex cell, and 23 chromosomes comes from the father side and 23 chromosomes comes from the mother side. Out of these 23 chromosomes, 22 are the somatic cells and 1 is the sex cells from father and the mother. And when the X chromosomes fuses with the X chromosome of father, the offspring is female. When the X chromosomes fuses with the Y chromosomes of father, it is the male offspring. Now, let me describe about the periods of prenatal development. In this, the first stage is period of zygote, which starts from fertilization to the end of second week. And in this stage, many of the mother is not aware that she is pregnant. And the first cell in which the male genes are joined with the female is called the zygote. The zygote looks like an unfertilized egg, and the egg is so much larger than the sperm that it can absorb the sperm without showing it. However, the unfertilized egg has only 23 chromosomes, whereas the zygote has 46 chromosomes, 23 from the mothers and 23 from the fathers. Now comes the second stage of prenatal stage, that is embryo, which starts from the second week and end up to the second lunar month. And in this age, we find that the size of the embryo is 1.2 inch in length, and during this period, the cell of the embryo are not only multiplying, but they are taking on a specific function, and this process is called tissue differentiation. It is during this critical period of differentiation that the growing fetus is most susceptible to damage, especially from X-rays, rubella and other radiation and poor nutrition. Now, let me describe about the third stage of prenatal development, that is period of fetus, which starts with the second lunar month and ends up to birth of the child. And at this point, the embryo is developed enough to call a fetus, and all organs and structure found in full-term newborn are present. The eyelid closes now and will not reopen until about the 28th week. The tooth buds of the baby teeth appears. The genitalia are now clearly male or female. Now comes the next stage, that is infancy. And the period of this generally defined in terms of from birth to around 2 years. There are some medical professionals who define it around 2 years. There are psychologists who define around 1.5 years. But the first 2 years of an individual life are the time of his most rapid development. And although every child develops at its own rate, each grows up in an orderly and predictable patterns. And we find that they follow two kinds of development. One is called cephalocaudally, another is called proximodistal. In cephalocaudally, the development takes place from head to tail, and in proximodistal, it starts from trunk to both extreme. Now comes the characteristics of infants. It is the first time when the infants come out from the womb of mother. He or she has already spent 9 months in the womb of mother, and that's why he has to adjust to the outer surroundings. Infancy period is a plateau in development. The growth and development which took place during the prenatal period suddenly comes to a stop with birth. and it is a period of future prediction. How the children will be in future will be determined at this stage only, and it is considered as a period of full of hazards in terms of physical and psychological adjustment. Now comes the second stage, that is childhood. Once the infancy period is over, approximately 2 years of the age group, child period is divided into two parts: early childhood, which hovers from 2 to 6 years, and late childhood, which hovers from 6 to the time the child becomes sexually mature. And it is a period as a conclusion of infancy period. It is also defined as period from birth to 8 years of age, a time of remarkable brain development. These years laid the foundation for subsequent learning. Now comes the characteristics of children. Some parents feel that behavior problem of childhood are more troublesome than physical care of infants. Some behavioral problems occurs in this period, such as obstinacy, stubbornness, disobedience, negativistic and antagonistic. And it is age because most of the child are engaged in their toys, so it is also called toy age. And it is also helpful to educate the children, and toy becomes the important elements of their play activities. This is a period when a child is considered physically and mentally independent. It is also a school age. Children are become more self-sufficient, independent, develop self-esteem. They also develop physical, cognitive, emotional and social development. Now comes the second stage of development, that is adolescent. The age group which falls under adolescent, there is little contradiction. Earlier it was defined as the age of puberty. Now, few years back, it was defined from 12 to 19 years. But last year, UNICEF has redefined the age group from 12 to 11 years to 19 years. Because of early puberty among teenage children, the adolescent age has been redefined. And early, it is being divided into three parts: early adolescence, which is from 12 to 14 years. And the characteristics of early adolescence are: it is a contradictory phase when the child is no longer a child and it is no longer an adolescent. And this is a time the youngsters find the drastic physical changes as a source of irritation. Some who are physically not well grown feel somewhat inferior to others. And also there is a lot of confusion, hesitation and a search for one's own real identity. Now comes the characteristics of early adolescent. They begin to demonstrate the use of formal logic operation, and they begin to question the authority and society, and they begin to form and verbalize their own thoughts. Which sports are better to play? Which groups are better to be included in? With what personal appearance are desirable or attractive? What parental rules should be changed? Now comes the next stage, that is middle adolescent, which hovers from 14 to 17 years. And the characteristics of these age groups are that there are a whole lot of changes that occurs, be it physical, mental, cognitive or sexual. While most of the girls crosses their puberty stage, boys are still on the road of maturing physically. And the characteristics are that they often question more extensively, they often analyze more extensively, and what they think about and begin to form their own code of ethics. What do I think is right? What do I want? Who am I? And they ask such kind of similar questions. Now comes the next stage, that is late adolescent. which hovers from 17 years to 19 years, and it is closely to adulthood, and they are more concerned about their gratification of their desires and are able to think ideas thorough. And in this age group, they start finalizing their thoughts about what role they want to play in their life, and become more concerned about their future. Now comes the characteristics of this group. They start thinking about more global concepts such as justice, history, polity, and patriotism. They often develop idealistic view on a specific topic. They debate and discuss a great deal and also show intolerance to opposing views. And they begin to focus their thinking on making career decisions. They begin to focus their thinking on emerging roles in adult society. Now comes the next stage, that is puberty, which is a stage of life during which you become biologically and sexually mature. It happens to all individuals. In girls, it is from 9 to 10 years, and in boys, it starts from 12 to 13 years. Puberty is often talked about a period of turbulence and trial because the child begins to develop a sex drive, experience mood swings, develop relationship with people of the same and opposite gender, and face different kinds of pressure at home and at school. Now comes the next age group, that is early adulthood. It is a stage of life between the age of about 20 to 40 years, and we find that during the period of young adulthood, one seems as an autonomous and independent adult, and a major developmental task during this period is the choice of a career. Young men and women tend to settle down in career of their choice. In addition, a young adult tries to settle down and start a family life. And the stage of young adulthood is characterized by new tasks and challenges in life, such as establishing financial and emotional independence and entering into the marital relationship. Now comes the next stage, that is middle adulthood. In middle adulthood, an important challenge is to develop a genuine concern for the welfare of future generation and to contribute to the world through family and work. This period is aged between 40 to 60 years, and Erik Erikson refers to the problem posed at this stage at generativity versus self-absorption. He characterized the middle adulthood as a phase of crisis, and the midlife transition is also the period of turbulence of the 40s. And we find that there is loss of elasticity in the skin, especially on the face. Most individuals get a little shorter through the year, and hair starts graying, skin is wrinkling, body are sagging, and teeth are yellowing. So these are the certain changes physically we can observe among the adulthood. Now comes the last stage, that is old age. It is a period of life in every individual that follows the period of his or her life. And when he or she turns around 65 years of age, it consists of age nearing or surpassing the average lifespan of human being, and thus the end of human life cycle. People can be considered old because of certain changes in their activities or social roles. Old people have limited regenerative abilities and are more prone to disease, syndromes, and sickness than other adults. For example, people can be considered as old when they become grandparents, or when they begin to do less or different works, or when they get the age of retirement. There are some sensory changes which is taking place among old age, which includes hearing, vision, taste and smell, touch, changes in bones and muscles, teeth and mouth, digestion, circulation, cardiovascular and respiratory system, and immune system declines as the T cell become less effective. Today we have discussed about the stages of lifespan, and we will meet again with some new topics. Thank you.